Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Centerbrook Architects Lecture Series. My name is Ann Thompson, and I'm the Assistant Director for Public Services at the Essex Library. I'm delighted to welcome you all to tonight's presentation by George Miller. Thank you for giving us your Friday evening. And while we get you all into the meeting, I'm going to shout out some of the house rules here. Because we're expecting a very large crowd tonight, your microphones are going to be muted and your cameras will be off. Afterwards, we will have a question and answer period with George following his presentation. So please type any of your questions into the chat and we'll try to get to every single one of them if time allows. I am required by the State Library to submit statistics to them about all of our adult programs and so how many people have attended. So it's critical that I find out from you how many people are viewing your screen tonight. So I'd really appreciate it if you could type in. It looks like you're doing that. I don't even need to explain it to you. Thank you. While you're doing that, I would like to just say we are in the second half of our 13th year of the architecture lectures. We've had an amazing run with this, and I'm just delighted at the number of people who have attended and the rank and rigor of speakers that we've been able to host. Previous speakers this year, starting in September, have been Michael Crosby, who had an overview of Caesar Pelli's career. We had Jack Sobin, who talked about his career with buildings made entirely of hand-hewn wood. Robert Miller from Bolin Sawinski's office, Seattle office, and Takashi Yanai from EYRC spoke about their amazing residential projects. And Nick Deaver down in Austin, Texas, gave us a look-see at his residential work too. And lastly, in February, we heard from architectural historian at the University of Hartford, Theodore Saurek, who talked about the architectural design going on in Herat, Afghanistan, and that was really fascinating. All of these lectures were recorded and they are available for viewing on the Essex Library's YouTube channel under our playlist, which if you look at the chat, I have put the link in there if you would like to find that. And I would be very pleased now to hand the introduction of George Miller over to my partner in crime, Jim Childress, partner at Centerbrook Architects.
Thank you, Ann. Delighted to have all of you here. It's a real joy. And I'm thrilled to introduce George. He is the Chief Operating Officer at Richard Meyer and Partners. And if you've read his bio, George is a Penn State grad, and I love the way he puts this. He went to graduate school with IMPay, where he spent 43 years working with him and becoming the managing partner of Pay Cobb Freed. He's also been the national president of the American Institute of Architects and received endless awards for his contributions to architecture, to our profession on an international scale. And he was recently chair of the AIA Committee on Design, leading conferences to look at new architecture in Vancouver and Chile. So George, in short, has earned the right to be a bit full of himself if he wanted to be. And yet, many of you know him, he's not. He's here to talk about IMPay, not himself, and that seems fitting. I have had the joy of traveling with George over the last few years, and I've learned a lifelong lesson from him. No matter how stressed his day may be, you will never know it. He'll walk into a room and he makes you feel like $1 million. His joy and enthusiasm is contagious. And he makes it all about whoever you are, not about himself. And I've watched him treat dignitaries, colleagues, even waitstaff, cabbies, and Cobby Center staff all the same. And George, I've always wanted to say this publicly. You set a tremendous example to follow about how to care about people. And he can't say it, so I'm going to. I think part of IMPay's awesome talent was hiring George to back him up, and it had to add to their success. I really look forward to some of the inside stories that you're going to share with us tonight. Thanks for joining us.
He's in his office. Yeah.
Thank you, Jim. I think I'm on now. I hope I am. That was a generous introduction, and I love this profession. I've loved working as an architect, and I was really blessed to have the opportunity to work with IMPay for so many years. And as I think you'll see in our conversation tonight, I hope to give you some insight into IM as the man, and I'm very interested in kind of showing you his projects. I won't show all of them. I tried to really this presentation to just the key projects that I think that IM is well known for, and the things that I worked on, and the projects where I have some special insights. So I don't take any credit for this kind of catchy title, The Winning Ways of IM Pei. I think Paul Goldberger actually used it for a piece that he did about IM Pei back before the Louvre opened. And of course, here you see the Louvre, which is completed in the pyramid in 1989 in Paris. And it was really a remarkable project. And I'll speak about that as we kind of go through this presentation. So I hope you all relax, grab a cocktail. It's going to be wonderful just to kind of look at images. And I haven't looked at some of these for quite some time myself. So it's a joy and a blessing for me too. So IM Pei, of course, we lost him a couple of years ago in April of 19. He lived to a ripe old age of 102, and there are very few architects that really have that longevity. I think maybe Niemeyer had a longer life, but IM's life was rich and full and highly rewarded. You can see here on the screen a number of the accolades that he received, including the AIA gold medal, the Pritzker, the RIBA gold medal, and the UIA gold medal. Much of what I'm going to show you this evening comes from the presentation that I made at IM's request to the UIA, the Union of International Architects, in Durban, South Africa in 2014. But I think I really love this picture of IM because it really captures him, you know, as a person, and you know, his really wonderful expression that you can see on his face. I'm just going to start a timer. I can talk about IM for hours and days, but I want to make sure that I don't go on too long. Anyway, IM came to this country in 1935, I believe. He grew up in China, of course, and he lived in Shanghai. He lived for a short period of time in Hong Kong, and his family home, and he's a descendant of the Ming Dynasty, was in Sucho and in China. And I've had the pleasure of visiting his boyhood home, which you know, has these incredible stone lions in a garden with water and wonderful features. And it kind of reminds me of living in a du buffet. He had a wonderful life. He came to New York, as I said, or to the United States. He took a train from San Francisco to Philadelphia, where he first entered college. And he found the architectural program there to be somewhat limited. I mean, they were all into the Beaux-Arts, and he wanted to kind of look into modern architecture. So he quickly transferred to MIT, and he was in the engineering program there for some time before he switched into architecture, and he got his master's of architecture at MIT. And he was really keen on going to Harvard. He had met Corbusier, and Corbusier was there along with Breuer and Gropius. And of course, Gropius coming from Bauhaus. He was really energized by the architectural education at Harvard. He came to New York, and some of you may know that this is a photograph of a gentleman by the name of Bill Zuckendorff. Bill Zuckendorff is a real estate icon in New York, maybe like how Steve Roth is today with Related, but Zuckendorff was actually the one who put the land together to be able to build the United Nations on the East River. And so he was really a larger than life figure. And I don't know when this picture was taken, but I don't know about you, but kind of putting phones in cars was back then was quite an achievement, I guess. But Zuckendorff was looking for an architect to come and join his company. And so he talked to, as the legend goes, Philip Johnson, and asked Philip Johnson who an upcoming architect was out of Harvard, and Johnson recommended Pei. So Pei came and met with Zuckendorff, and all of a sudden Pei became the in-house architect for Webb and Knapp, and Webb and Knapp was doing redevelopment all across the country. and IM had the opportunity to work on some significant projects there, mostly urban renewal, as it was called then, in cities like Philadelphia and in the far west, in Denver and Erie, Pennsylvania, and Pittsburgh, where he's kind of working on housing for the city. And you know, he also in New York did something called the Kips Bay project, which I'll show you in a moment. But the first thing that he did, along with one of his colleagues, Harry Cobb, was design Bill Zuckendorff's office, which you can see here on the top of 385 Madison Avenue, long since torn down and skyscrapers put in their place. But that was one of the first things that IM and Harry did in the New York area. But this is really literally IMP's first building. It's called the Gulf Oil Building. It's built in Atlanta, Georgia. And you can see it's 2 stories. It's very Miesian in its kind of design features. You can see the corner, you can see the glass and the mullions, the use of marble as a spandrel. And this building was in place until I think just around 2000, 2003 or so, when a developer bought the land, dismantled the building, saved all the pieces of the exterior facade, and last I heard was going to put them in a new building that was being planned to go up on this site. But that really is known as IM's first building for Gulf Oil. He also did, around the same time, a building in Taiwan. And you know, the mainland Chinese and the Taiwanese, of course, always have, you know, their issues back and forth. And back in the 50s, I think IM was very comfortable in designing this chapel for Luce. And it was in Taichung in Taiwan. But you can see already IM's thinking about the use of architectural concrete and these concrete coffers that you can see in the right, and the use of tile on the exterior, and you can see the section and plan. I had the chance to visit this, and it was quite interesting. One of the architects who worked for IMP years later, his name was Chen, and Kuan worked with me on a project that we did in Taiwan years later, and he told me this story of the workmen not wanting to release the wood forms that supported these coffers. And Chen had to do it himself. I think all the workers were afraid that the roof would collapse with that weight. But thankfully, there were no difficulties, and this building looks as fresh today as it did then. IM went back to MIT to design this Cecil and Ida Green Center for Earth Sciences. So it was a tower, as you can see, and the tower was utilized architectural concrete as well. And here you also see one of IM's features, which is the introduction of art. And IM did probably commissioned 50 art pieces for his projects in his lifetime, perhaps more. But this is a stable done by Alexander Calder right in front of the building. And you can see that in this plan, there's the tower, and IM went on to do, I think, 4 other buildings, including the engineering building, which is here in this triangle, and the tower located here. There's Alexander Calder and a young IMP. You can tell they really got along extremely well, and a lot of fun. And you'll see other photographs of IM really, and other artists that he worked with over the years. Sandy Calder, as he was called, had a piece that hung in IM's Sutton Place apartment or townhouse for years, which I really always admired. One of his most significant projects, early projects, and I think this is really considered by some as IM's first project out of the influence of Bill Zuckendorff. This is an NCAR, it's called the National Center for Atmospheric Research, built in Boulder, Colorado. And this is in a very privileged location over the city. And one of the things, of course, that IM wanted to do is to have a building which was which had some strength so it could hold its place among the mountains that surrounded it. And one of the things that I really enjoyed hearing about this project, and I've visited and talked to the people out there, is that IM actually decided that the way to make this building fit more comfortably in the environment was to take the stone from the mountain quarry and actually crush it and use it in the concrete mix. So you can see it's warmer and it kind of has the color of the mountain behind it. So that's the detail that I am brought to every project. The building used both board formed, bush hammered concrete and smooth formed concrete, as we'll see as we go forward in these images. There is IM and the client, Walter Robert, at kind of an anniversary of the opening of the building. I don't know what year that is, but I would say by looking at IM, it was probably 20 years or so ago. You'll see the towers of the NCAR building here, and here this view of the building in the mountains. And all of this was really quite interesting for a young architect coming in and seeing how accomplished IM Pei was really back in the 60s. And I know there are a few people from the Pei office who have joined the call, and I'm really delighted that you have, and I'm sure that you can share more stories than I can regarding IM and his wonderful career. So maybe we'll have a chance to hear from you in the Q&A. Here you can see bush-hammered concrete on the left and smooth-formed concrete in the parapet that's there. And the circulation through the site was really important for Roberts and for IM. And you can see this exterior stairway. And the whole idea was that there'd be an opportunity, a chance, if you will, for unintended meetings between researchers there. And it's quite a special building. He also did this building. This is one of his early museum projects. This is called the Everson Museum of Art in Syracuse, and done between 1961 and 1967. And you can see it's very brutalist in its form, a very rigid, inverted L's, if you will. And in the top right, you'll see just a quick sketch of IM's thought about this project. And below it, immediately, you'll see the kind of rendered elevation in the bottom images of a roof plan of the building. So you can see it was a series of components really around courtyards. This building was important because I think it led to other buildings that IM was doing subsequently. The inside of the building, of course, the stair was really a tour de force, and again, built in concrete. I think this is all terrazzo on it. You can see, again, the coffered concrete ceilings that IM was so well known for. And here I begin the collection of artists. And I think this is a Motherwell here, if I'm not mistaken. He went on to do the Cleo Rogers Memorial County Library in Columbus, Indiana. He did a number of libraries in his career, and these are regional projects. I mean, in Columbus, Indiana, you know, that was really a community that sponsored architects, and the Cummins engine factory was there. And I believe that Cummins actually paid the fees for prominent architects across the country to come to Columbus. And if you ever have a chance to go to Columbus, you'll really get a quick education in architectural design in that city. Here again in the foreground on the left, you'll see another Henry Moore sculpture. And this was at the turnaround, the drop off of at the building. The Des Moines Art Center addition in Des Moines, Iowa. This was finished in, I think, around 1968. And you can see an elevation there on the left, and the architectural concrete board forming, which is vertically here, and then a stair going to a lower level. And this project, I think, was an addition, really. And you may say, well, addition to what? You know, we don't see anything else there. Well, here it is. On the left, Saarinen's 1948 original art center for Des Moines. IMP's edition 20 years later in 1968. And here on the right, Richard Meyer's edition in 1984. And this building is really a building that is easily recognized as a Richard Meyer building. Richard Meyer, of course, being well known for designing buildings with grids and using porcelain panels or aluminum panels, as you can see here. And this building also is well known, I think, certainly across Iowa. It brings me to the Kennedy Library. And the Kennedy Library was a long saga. I mean, the project went on from, I think, 64 actually to 79. And just to give you a little introduction to this project, IM was selected after Mrs. Kennedy reviewed qualifications of a whole number of architects, including, I think, Louis Kahn and others. And Mrs. Kennedy really felt that she had a great, strong, and immediate connection with I.M. Pei, who happened to be born in the same year that JFK was born. And she felt it was easy to kind of communicate with him. And here, of course, you see Mrs. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy and I.M. I think at the time of the announcement of I.M. as the architect for the JFK Library. The JFK Library, it took many, many turns over the years. And originally, the project was intended to be in Cambridge. And the IM did several schemes, and they were met with different levels of enthusiasm. And I would say that the difficulty was that a lot of the people in Cambridge were concerned about the tourism that would come as a result of the JFK Library being there. And so after many tries, the building was essentially moved out of Cambridge and onto a site in the harbor area of Boston and Dorchester, I think the name of the town was. I may be wrong on that. But here you see it as it was finished, and the building essentially was intended to have this memorial component, which was this glass room with just a single large American flag in it, reflecting JFK and what he meant to our country. And it, of course, had the view back to Boston and a view of the water. And it was really quite a special project when they finished it. But I have to say, there's a story that IM told me about selecting this site. So after they were in, they really had to leave Cambridge location. They were looking for another place, and this place literally was a place where it was sanitary fill, or it was a dump, in a word. And you know, it had to be covered, and it had to be treated properly so that the methane, the gases, could be taken off the site. But IM was really worried about this site when he took people out there, and he was taking the Kennedy family there. And the story is told to me, decided that he was going to get a flatbed truck. And when the people arrived at the site, IM asked him to get on a flatbed truck, which is, 4 feet or more up in the air, so that they could sense the site when more fill was placed, and the entry levels of the building were up higher, so you could look out, over Boston Harbor. So I thought that was kind of an ingenious move. Next project I'm going to show is the Dallas City Hall, and these projects are really probably well known to some of you in the audience, but this was finished in 1977. And I would say there was a time when, and it may still be true, where Dallas really embraced IM Pei, and many, many buildings were built in that city. This building has its kind of sloping facade to kind of shelter the ground plane from the scorching Dallas sun. It also reflected the park, and water was there that tried to cool off this area during midday. But I also heard recently a story that that when this project was first conceived, some of the criticism that it received was that it looked like it was falling over. And you can see here in the section, the steep slope, I think it's like 36 degrees, if I'm not mistaken. And here, I think a drawing by one of our colleagues, Ted Musho, of that slope. And the whole thing was connected below grade with parking, which probably made it financially feasible. But I heard that many people were just afraid that the thing looked like it was going to fall over. So these, which are stair towers, gave the sense that the building was a little more stable visually. And I don't know whether that's a true story or not, but I thought I'd relay it anyway. Again, art, an important part of what IM was doing and what he convinced his clients to do. And so here you see IM Pei and Henry Moore again, and they're both just wonderfully happy and smiling. It's a great day when you can open a building and celebrate art in the city, and that's what IM, I think, was always working towards. The National Gallery of Art in Washington, another very, very important project for IM. I think the project of his career, of course, up to this time. It was finished in 1978. It's in addition to the original National Gallery of Art, which is here in the foreground to the right. I think this was designed in the 30s by Pope, I believe. And the key thing here, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the kind of the decisions that went into kind of the design geometry that IM used, is that here you have Pennsylvania Avenue, and here you have the mall. And so in this sketch of IM's, there's the early west wing of the National Gallery of Art. Here's Pennsylvania Avenue, and here's the mall. And here's the site that IM was given. And this site essentially had, IM transformed it into two triangles. And one triangle is for the gallery itself, and this is covered by a large skylight, which you'll see. And the other portion of the project was located here, and that was the educational center, the administrative zone, and the like. And this looks out, of course, onto the Capitol. But the constraints of the site and the geometry of the site really led directly to the geometry of the National Gallery of Art. So here is the entrance to the east wing. And IM was selected also by a process, and Carter Brown was involved with this, and Paul Mellon, who gave the money for the original, Paul Mellon's father, I should say, gave the money for the original National Gallery of Art, was his son, Paul Jr., I guess, gave the money for, and his family gave the money for the East Building, as you see here. It's connected below grade. I hope many of you had the opportunity to get in it and to go there. Lit by, here you see some small little skylights which bring light into the circulation space below. And below this, you have a cafeteria, you have dining, you have sales, museum sales in this area. But it's really bright to walk from one place to the other and see the water cascading down this waterfall. I think this kind of idea, I think, was done by D.D. Pei, I believe, working with IM, of course, but there it was. And the gallery itself, I mean, IM had everything to do with it, but he also had a couple of people that were working with him. One was Bill Pedersen, and Bill Pedersen went on to found with Gene Cohn and another Fox, Shelley Fox, the firm KPF, which is a dominant architectural firm, working globally. Just before I leave this image, I wanted to point out this edge of the educational building, which had this, I think it was 19.5 degree corner on it that people just felt was really exceptional, and they would go over here and rub with their hands on the stone and cause it to darken. So there you have the geometry of the educational building, which you see here, and then the gallery itself. here's the inside of the gallery. And you know, this, people, I think, some criticize this building because of the generosity of the gathering place in the center. And, you know, IM said, you know, this is a national gallery of art. You really have to have a place where people can kind of enter this building. They kind of can come in and they can get orientated, and it's a good place for big pieces of art. Here you see another Calder hanging in the space. You see other artists here in the main space. And you see also, take notice of this skylight, and we'll see that again in a minute. Here's another Calder hanging in that center space. And one of the things that was always kind of appreciated by many that were involved in detail is the way in which you could come up this stair to a landing, and then there are a pair of escalators here which take you to the upper level. And there wasn't enough room within the existing geometry of the building to kind of move from, to get both of these escalators in properly. So the decision was made to actually carve that stone so the escalator could properly fit in the space. So I thought that was really, really quite a beautiful detail. The stair here, which goes up to the third level, fourth level galleries, and you can see one of the tower galleries here, which had, I think, David Smith there at the opening day. You can see this ley light above it. So, I mean, it was really a remarkable building in the minds of many. I mentioned the skylight, and here you see some drawings on the left-hand side of the screen that were done, I believe, by Stephen Olds, an illustrator that worked with IM on so many projects over the years. And as I understand it, and the design of this happened really before I was with the firm, but you can see the top diagram, 1969, of a more solid concrete ceiling with vaults. And as you move down towards the bottom, you see sketches which were 1971, where the suggestion was made that perhaps the ceiling of this great central space could be glass. And as you can see, that decision is stuck. And then it was a matter of how we really design, you know, sun shading that really works. So there isn't a lot of direct sun coming into the space. And so there were a series of pipe screens, as they were called, which were like an inch or so, inch and a quarter in diameter, which were on a regular spacing, which cut the sun, the direct sun into the space, and cut down some of the noise as well. This detail was refined in later years, where the actual aluminum tubes were essentially filled with absorbent material facing the glass, so that spaces could become quieter. So that's a detail that you'll see as we kind of move through the show. You know, the Raffle City project in Singapore was a project done for a number of very well-to-do Chinese businessmen who were in Singapore. And I only show this because this was the first project that I worked on when I joined Pei's office in '75. And I didn't have anything to do with anything that you see in this slide, in these slides, these images. The tall tower was, I think, 72 stories, and it was the tallest hotel in the world at the time. And there was another smaller hotel, which to the right you can see, which was essentially for more lower and moderate travelers, moderate income travelers, and then an office building, which is here. So you might say, if I didn't have anything to do with any of that stuff, what did I do? And I was involved completely in the below grade spaces. That's what I did for a year when I first got into the office. And it was an exciting year just the same. I really enjoyed it. The world's largest concrete pour was made in the basement of this area because the building was built on a concrete raft, if you will, so that the building would be stable and wouldn't start moving. I only show this because I am again worked with Moreau, you see in the left. This was a project that we did with with Jerry Hines, his Hines organization. The tower I'm speaking about is the one here on the left, and you architectural buffs will know that this is Pennzoil done by Philip Johnson. So I'm coming now to Fragrant Hill Hotel in Beijing. So, I am left China in 1934, 35. He didn't go back to China until 1972 or 4, somewhere along there. If you remember your history, those of you who are old enough, you'll know that China and the United States were not open to each other. And President Nixon really started something which is called ping pong diplomacy. And through that ping pong diplomacy, the doors between China and the United States slowly opened. And IM went along with a group of architects from the AIA to begin to talk about cooperation between China and the United States. When IM was asked to do a building in China, he wanted to do something which was low, I should say, and kind of in the tradition of Chinese building. At that time, of course, there were other architects going to China and trying to do tall buildings, and they were doing tall buildings in Beijing and Shanghai and other cities. But IM wanted to do something low and kind of traditional. And so this is what he did. And you can see here the building as it meets the ground and water, and you see the kind of surrounds, the windows, you see the shades and the like. And here's IM in the center with one of the portals leading from the courtyard space, one courtyard space to another. You can see the moon-shaped window on the, I guess, on the left, and this rotated square on the right. And he was very, I think, unhappy with this project, I think is the word to use at the end, because even though they had over 3,000 workers on site trying to finish this, they weren't really skilled laborers, and they weren't really well acclimated to kind of working in this way. So IM's family was there along with friends, cleaning rooms and trying to get the building in shape for its opening. As you can imagine, IM was really interested in bringing a lot of his friends from the United States to this area, which was called Fragrant Hill. And he wanted to make sure it was all right. This was a building that the government kind of took over in subsequent years and use it for their own purposes. One of the things that I like about this particular view, in addition to seeing the stone formations in the garden, is this horizontal plane, really, which has the water runnel kind of carved into it. And the idea of this, and this was, I think, on the site originally, but it was enhanced and the like here. But it was for poets, and the story goes that poets would be asked to create a poem, and they would put something in the water here, and by the time it went all the way through the water runnels to the end, they had to have a poem composed. So I kind of like that story. I mean, I'm not certain that it's absolutely true, but it's a nice story. I'm coming now to a project that I worked on in Dallas from 1981 until it opened in 1989, and I worked every minute of every day on this project with a lot of friends and colleagues. And I put this up because I want to start by, again, I want to talk a little bit about the geometry and how it came about. But this was known as the Dallas Arts District. Another American architect of prominence, Edward Larry B. Barnes, did the museum. It's located here. And the community of Dallas did this arts district. And it essentially went here from a fountain in a courtyard all the way to the end, here to the right. And along the way, there were a number of buildings built for performing arts and for art galleries. And one is here. This is the site of the Meyerson Symphony Center. This is the site of the Opera House, which was done by Foster. This was an arts magnet high school located here. And then I think in a subsequent year, Tom Main did a ballet school here. So it really is the heart of arts in Dallas. And the arts, the building itself, the Symphony Hall, was, the acoustician was selected in advance of IMPay. The acoustician, Russell Johnson of Artec, had kind of deemed that after, his studies of concert halls in Europe, that the shoebox shape was the most appropriate shape for this concert hall, which had, I think, 2,179 seats in it. And, the problem with the site, which was just here, that it didn't have enough depth that you could provide a building which is kind of more orthogonal to the grid and allowed a grander kind of entry lobby and support space that was necessary behind the stage, which is this end, behind the platform. These folks right here, this is a drive-in bank, and they wouldn't sell. And so we really had to kind of design something in a different way. The story goes in the office that IM went on a holiday to Mexico and was sitting at the edge of the ocean, or at the edge of the sea, and started drawing this box and the lines that are around it. And he had to move up the beach further and further as the kind of design looked more interesting to him. That's the story. Again, I don't know whether that's true. Here you have the building. It's Indiana limestone. It's a lot of glass. This, curvilinear forms, very Baroque in its outlook as well. This is a conoid around this ring beam, which supports the lens above it. You can see the conoid here going down to grade and the part beyond it outside. Here's another example of art that was part of what IM was always trying to do. This was designed by the Spanish artist Chaita, and this is just called, I think it's called De Musica. And you think that's an easy thing to accomplish, but Chaita insisted that this be built out of about solid materials. So this whole thing is solid, and so making sure that thing can be held up is really quite a challenge for us, but it worked. There are a lot of stories about the construction of this building and how it worked. You see this big arch, which is located here, was necessary to kind of redirect, hold the Arts District main streets as parallel to the street. And here you have the conoid and the lenses. And IM's idea, and I don't have a picture of this, but his idea was to, at the evening when this building is being used, this whole thing would glow like a lantern. And it was really quite a special opening evening. IM was involved with everything, including the design of these light fixtures, which had onyx in them. And when you look at this building, everybody in Dallas drives, of course, and you come from the parking below up a stair here into the lobby, which is at the lower level down here. And the interesting thing about this, just from somebody who was there and lived it, is that we were trying to get the travertine floor in place, and this is a radial pattern. So these pavers are they're large and they're different sizes, and we were trying to get the builder to essentially get this stone in place on the lobby, first level, in time for opening, and of course they couldn't do it. So we put carpet in here of color, and this happens to be one of our former colleagues, Charlie Young, and Paul Goldberger, who was there for the opening and wrote about the building. He was very positive about it. I'd much rather be with all of you face to face in an auditorium or somewhere where we could kind of, enjoy conversation, because I'm sure you have thoughts about what you're seeing and questions about what you're seeing. But hopefully we'll all be together soon. I mean, this COVID thing has got to end soon, and I hope you're all getting vaccinated, and we're on the road to recovery, I hope. The inside of the concert hall I mentioned is this shoebox, and you can see that in this section, the seating, the first tier, second, third tier. This actually, I think the same number of seats is the same seats as Carnegie Hall, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while. This area of the hall is a reverberation chamber. And so the sound comes up and goes into these spaces and bounces around, comes back out. It's kind of can be separated from the main hall with big concrete walls. And it's quite a feat. It's been used, but for more intimate presentations and music, chamber music and the like, the idea was that they would close these doors off, and they could actually, we had doors here where you could bring out fabric on the walls so you could soften the room. And this large canopy that you see here, which has to have all the lighting that's necessary to support performance and people reading their scores here. It was quite really a challenge. This canopy was one of the biggest issues of debate in the entire project. And, I have to say that at one point, there was a big meeting between IM, Pei, and the acoustician about the details of the project. And IM insisted that you enjoy a performance not only with your ears, but also with your eyes. This canopy was supposed to drop down for small chamber groups, that kind of thing. And I think most of the time it is a bit lower, but we wanted it high because the view of this incredible organ, which was donated by the Fisk family, or by the Frito-Lay family, I think. And it was built by Fisk in New England. It also has onyx in the canopy and the like. And it was really quite a wonderful project. This project opened also in 1989, the year that the Meyerson opened. It's the Bank of China in Hong Kong. And I probably have to speed up my remarks a bit, but this one was really special for IM because he's going back to his old stomping grounds. And his father was a president of the Bank of China years ago, and they asked IM to do this building, and he agreed to do it. This building, and I'm going to point out one feature that relates to feng shui. And in this particular image, you see these squares. And at one time, there was a horizontal here and a horizontal here. And when you had these horizontals in this position, these are big X's in the facade. And feng shui experts said that's really bad. It's kind of bad like it is in the United States, X's that, means no. And so IM took the horizontal out of here and out of here and turned it into a diamond. So here you have a diamond, there you have a diamond, there you have a diamond. So it actually was considered to be a good fortune then. Here are 3 images of the project. See? And on the left, I am working with a small wooden model, kind of showing how the forms came out of a square, as you can see it here. The structure of this building was designed by Les Robertson. Les Robertson was one of our nation's most incredible structural engineers, who sadly just passed away a month or so ago. And he worked on many projects with IMPay. Here's the base. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which began in '87 and finished in '95. Everybody thought, well, here's IM. He's just done a concert hall now. What's he know about rock and roll? Well, he had some kids, and through them, he knew a lot about rock and roll. So this is a very unusual project in terms of geometrical organization. You can see here in the center, the glass kind of slope surface, which was a pyramid. And actually, this is a recall to what he was trying to do in Boston for the Kennedy family earlier. You see some photographs of the inside of the space. Now I'm going to come to the Grand Louvre in Paris. Started, I think, in 1981. The building opened, the pyramid portion of the building opened in 1989. This was a project that came to IM directly. He didn't accept it directly. He was approached by Mitterrand's aide, Biazini, and Biazini took him to Paris. They walked through the museum many, many times until IM finally decided, I think I have an idea that I can move forward with. This is a card that IM carried around in his jacket. You see the plan of the museum here, and IM's intervention was this space. So you really could come into the building, go right or left or up the sheet here into the long ends of the museum. I mean, the museum, when Mrs. Sen was here, you know, you had to walk all the way down here and then back around and then over here and around. So IM's idea was, let's excavate, let's try to do something so you can connect the portions of the museum in an effective way. So the pyramid was, as those of you will remember, was very controversial in Paris in 1889. That's about the time they built the Eiffel Tower, and the Eiffel Tower also had a lot of naysayers. And of course, over 100 years, it became really known well across Paris and embraced as really a symbol of the city. And I think the Louvre finally has come to that point as well. But there were many naysayers, and one of them was Jacques Chirac, who was the mayor of Paris, and he asked for this mock-up to be built. And so they built this mock-up with the cables, and you can see it here on the left, and there's the crane holding it, and people came to see it over the 4 days it was in place. And all of a sudden, with the support of some like Chirac and Catherine Deneuve and Pierre Boulez, and they were vocal about it, the pyramid began to gain some acceptance in the city. One of the key things was the glass of the pyramid, you know, and IM wanted to be completely clear, and you know, it was hard to get it clear. But IM was in a meeting with Mitterrand, and told Mitterrand the only people that can make clear glass are the Germans. And Mitterrand asked one of his aides to pick up the phone and bring it to him, and he called Saint-Gobain, the French company, glass manufacturers, and that was the end of it. Saint-Gobain made the glass for the pyramid. Here you see a couple of photographs of it under construction. Here are some diagrams again, a section in the top, and you'll see renderings done by Stephen Oles. And then here is the stair. Of course, you come in at the upper level, and you can walk down that circular stair, take the piston elevator to the lowest level. Here you see the pyramid in Crusade, and that was a folly that IM wanted. And those of you who have read Dan Brown's books will know that this was where the treasure was buried, right? Treasure. What was the name of that book? I don't remember. Da Vinci Code. Here's IM at the pyramid in Crusade, and there's some night shots of it. I always like the way the lighting was done. Claude Engel, I think, was the one who did that. And this shot on the right, taken by the photographer Marc Ribot, of a young girl showing her enthusiasm as she goes through one of the arches that leads to the building. Miho Museum in Shiga, Japan was one of IM's most remarkable projects, I think. And I'll go quickly through this, but essentially, IM found a client who was really remarkable, and this religious group wanted to build this museum for the collection of, started out with tea ceremony implements, and it grew to something much larger than that. But in this particular project, the Koyama family had some property here. Because this is a very important natural preserve as land, IM was really asked to, you know, put the building as much as possible underground. And I think at the end of the day, 2/3 of the building is underground. And the problem was how to get to this site. And IM convinced the client that we had to build a tunnel and build this bridge until you got to the entrance. You'll see it now. So you're on the bridge looking back to the tunnel, and the left, you know, an image of the bridge. There you're coming out of the tunnel. The bridge is ahead of you on the left, and the building in front of you, and there on the right, the stairs that take you to this, the main entry place, and there it is, right straight ahead of you, looking out over the wonderful, wonderful landscape. I worked with IM on this museum in Luxembourg, the Museum d'Art Moderne in Luxembourg. This came after the pyramid, and I think the Luxembourg Duchy wanted to have a place for their art. And of course, unlike the Louvre, the Luxembourg Museum did not really have much of a collection, so they had to set about to try to find a collection. This is built on an old fortification. You can see it here. So these walls really set on the old fort, and that was a big issue with Bâtiment Historique. And you know, this place was a preserve, and the Belgians had to come and prove everything that was done here. And so the way you arrive at this, you come across the bridge, and you're into the building. And you can see some familiar shapes here on the left with the skylights, and here are the ramparts of the old fortification on the right. And this is the moat that surrounded the building. And here's some inside shot of the exhibition spaces. I think finally we're getting to the end of it now. The Sucho Museum in Suzhou, China, where IM's family spent years. This was again a place for display of Chinese art. Suzhou opened this building up for free, and just after the opening of the museum, you couldn't get anywhere near this place because there were so many people interested in seeing it. And you see some courtyard shots here. This museum, for those of you who know Sucho, is just on the other side of the wall of the humble administrator's garden. Here you see some of the interior spaces. The Museum of Islamic Art in Qatar, which was finished in 2008. I am convinced the authorities to build a land mass here so that he could put this museum on it, because he didn't want it surrounded by other buildings in the future. See the inside of it. And the building at night. This, I think, is one of IM's last projects, is the Miho Institute of Aesthetics, the chapel for their students. It's very small, intimate. Here you see a model on the right with the seating and the walls. You see here on the left the use of wood on the walls everywhere. It's a very gentle place. And I'm just going to show you two things to finish, and then we'll open up for questions. Jim Fried, one of IM's partners, was asked to do this Holocaust Memorial Museum in the mall in Washington. And he, like IM, was very concerned that he'd be able to do it, and went to Germany and visited camps and the like, and was able to kind of come forward with this design. The building was opened by Bill Clinton, I believe, in 1993. And there's the interior of it with these bridges that one could go across on the top, and the central space on the left. And you can see the detailing of the building has some resonance to the gas chambers and the way they use steel straps to hold the brick together. A really profound building. And here's the Hall of Remembrance in the lowest level. And here, you know, in this one tower, the photographs on the image to the right in front of you are people who perished in one community during the Holocaust. And on a more uplifting note, I worked with my partner Yvonne Cito and Bruce White on this project, Nascar Hall of Fame. And the whole idea was the spectacle of speed, and this building with its Mobis strip here tried to really capture some idea of that movement in the building. And the inside of it has these cars on ramps. And I just want to point out that many people are not really that involved with NASCAR, but this was really quite something. This ramp is the actual slope of one of the racetracks that NASCAR uses for their race cycle, and it really is this steep, and it's remarkable. You can barely walk up it. Just to finish, not the least of Pei's achievements is that he has done more than perhaps any other modern architect to bring consistently high quality design to an enormous number of users. That's one of Carter Wiseman's quote, who was a biographer of I.M. Pei. So thanks. I've taken up your hour, and I hope I haven't kept you from cocktails, but I'm going to stop here and just with this image of IM, and kind of turn it back to Anne and Jim for any questions or comments that they might have.
Thank you, George. That was fabulous. What an amazing career. It's almost too much to believe. So Roger Schluntz has his hand up, and I'm going to ask him to unmute because I assume he has a question. Roger, can you unmute? There we go.
Thank you. Hi, George. That's a great presentation.
Thank you.
This is a little bit off of the mark, perhaps, but on the I.M. Pei Museum in Des Moines, Iowa, on that first elevation that you show, if you look at the massing, that it spells P-E-I, Pei. Was he aware of that, and was the client aware of that, or was that just all accidental?
I'm glad you did, but I don't know the answer to your question. But if I could go back quickly, I'd do that.
Please.
You probably did. You shut your eyes for a minute, everyone.
So there are many, many compliments in the chat, George, so you know as you're scrolling back through.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
And George, by the way, Steve Alls is on here.
That's great. Well, you saw Steve.
I saw his name here. There can't be more than one Steve Alls.
No, there's only one, and he's incredible. Here's the P that Roger is referring to. Here's the E, and here's the I. So Roger, whether that's correct or not. But
so you don't know whether he did that intentionally or.
I'm scrolling through everybody saying excellent presentation, wonderful presentation, just wonderful, George. Thank you. A deep bow of gratitude. We know that's from Tom Rossiter. Marianne Lau says, George, thank you for the walk through memory lane. I miss those days and people very much. What is one of your favorite memories with the firm?
One of my favorite memories of the firm. I've had so many, Marianne, and I'm glad you took a moment to watch the show. Most of this information is not new to you, but I would say one of my favorite moments was sitting in the orchestra of the Meyerson Symphony Center in September, I think, 9th of 1989, when I saw the fulfillment of what was by that time 9 years of hard work in hearing music for the first time in that concert hall. It was incredibly uplifting, and I really enjoyed that. And working with IM, as you remember, Marianne, was just a special activity. There's no question about it. And he was always a gentleman. I never heard him raise his voice once. Well, once. I told you about the bridge at the Luxembourg Museum, and when the people came down from Brussels to review the appropriateness of the building for something that was built in a historically important place, this gentleman suggested to IM that he didn't like the flat bridges going across the moats, and turned to IM and said, IM, I think you should make them Chinese bridges, red and arched. And IM kind of rolled his eyes, looked at me, and said, George, you take care of this, and walked off. So that was the kind of guy he was. He was a good guy.
RK Stewart has his hand up, so you're on, RK.
Hey, George. Great job. Thanks for sharing with us.
Yeah,
I'm sure you had more than one chance to travel with IM. What was he like as a travel companion?
Oh, it was terrific. It's like, we would always find a really exceptional restaurant. It may not be the restaurant that's most well-known in a community, but it's the restaurant that he knew the people, he knew the food, and it was really of highest quality. So I'll tell you a little story, RK. I was with IM in London when he received the British gold medal. And after the whole event, I was gonna just have dinner with Sandy, his son, and we were going to a restaurant, and IM came out with Eileen, and then it was Les Robertson and his wife came out and a couple of others. And Eileen says, well, you know, it's Chinese New Year's. We've got to go to an exceptional restaurant. We're going to go. We're all going to go together. So she said, let's go. So we got into taxis and went to this restaurant in Soho, in the city. And she walked into this restaurant, Chinese restaurant, and there was a line out back, you know, in front of this place. It must have had 50 people waiting to get in. It's Chinese New Year's and the place doesn't take reservations. Mrs. Pei walked to the front of the line and said, you know, but we've got to go in, we're here, we got, you know, all that kind of stuff. And you know what? 5 minutes later, we were seated at really the most prominent table in the restaurant with bottles of scotch put on the table for us. So he had a certain style, and she was really a wonderful life partner for him. But traveling with IM was really great. I mean, I was invited to go to the Élysée Palace with Mitterrand, and you know, it was a time when people could stand and talk with each other, and we did. I really enjoyed that a lot. You know, I was at the opening for the Miho Museum, and I wish I had some photographs of that because there were people banging drums as we walked up the steps to go into the building. It was really quite remarkable. So, I mean, just really a wonderful man to travel with, or a wonderful man to have as a mentor, and I miss him dearly, okay?
Thanks, George. Thomas Beck, I'm going to go to that question that's in the chat. Thomas Beck asks, and we all know that if you ask what your favorite building is, it's like having to pick your favorite child, but we're going to ask it anyway. What is the building that you are most proud of that you worked with IM on?
You know, that is a hard one. You know, once I was with Ada Louise Huxtable at a dinner in New York, and somebody came to the table and was talking to Ada Louise, and this person asked Ada Louise, what's your favorite building? And of course, she wouldn't answer that at all. And it's really a difficult kind of question to be asked. But I would say all the buildings that I worked on with Pei, I would have to say the Meyerson was really one that I really enjoyed, you know, because I was involved with every detail. I mean, from drawing, you know, and yellow trace to, you know, and Steve Olds, who's on the call, he'll remember that in those years that kind of predated the computers. And Steve actually did a drawing over a wireframe that was done. I think his team may have actually done it, but this was really in the days before the computer that we have today. And it showed the whole interior of the space. And I love that project. And you know, there are a lot of them. I mean, how can you pick one out of these wonderful buildings that he's done?
So true. So Stephen Miller has a question. If we get him to unmute.
Hi, Steve.
Stephen, are you still there? Well, maybe he's
okay.
Here.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
George, how are you?
I'm good, Steve. How are you? Where are you?
Okay. I'm in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Okay.
And enjoying it to an extent after the years where, you know, I've lived and so forth. Anyway, I sent a note earlier. I was at Boulder while that building was being constructed. I was a student at the university, and Titian Papacristo was my critic for my thesis, and he was working for IM Pei at the time. I guess, to do site supervision. And later on, he moved to New York and became a partner with Breuer. I was wondering if you, through your travails, because I was not in New York anymore or anything like that, ever met with Titian and ever discussed anything about the building?
I personally didn't, but I did go to Boulder and I met with, you know, the director of the institute out there and people who are in charge of it. And, you know, the challenge they're having in Boulder now is, you know, how do you get more researchers in the space? And they've really taken over, you know, every corner to really investigate the atmosphere. And, you know, it's a challenge, you know, when you build a building that's so, how shall I say, specially designed for its purpose. And what, even though you have some flexibility in it for future growth, I think they were having that difficulty. And, you know, I have to say that Steve, that the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. was one of those buildings that had a great deal of interested, you know, visitors that really came and kind of took over that building at times, but nothing like at the Louvre. At the Louvre, you know, they have big long lines outside to go in. And that's one of the things that they've been working on, is to try to manage the ticket system and the like so more people can get in. I don't know, the Louvre is closed right now, I guess. I think they're doing some work inside that needed to be done, and they've been able to accelerate the kind of schedule of doing those works in the interior because they've been able to close for COVID. But no, I didn't talk to Christian about anything in Boulder, and I'd like to meet him. Is he still around?
I don't know. I have to think. I was a student and he probably was 45, 50 years old then. So unless he's lived to 100 or something, I don't think he's around anymore. Because I'm 80 years old now. So I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, it's great. You know, while you're talking about the Louvre, being a person who lived in Paris a lot of my life, you know, everybody talks about the pyramid, but that space below grade and what it really did to tie that whole place is just fantastic. And, you know, it's underground, but it really is just as unique as, I believe, the pyramid above grade.
Yeah, can you see it on the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. So here's the pyramid. Here's the area below grade, and here there are three other small pyramids here and here. And you know, here you can see just how you come in. You go through ticketing and support. The auditorium is there, and you come back up, and you can go into the gallery spaces of the museum. And you're right. It's a remarkable feat. Actually, one of the things that was done is, you know, IM was always cautious, and the people who ran the Louvre were cautious too, that they wouldn't overcome the kind of public commentary about this building. And they actually built the structure around here first, and they built the glass structure, the glass pyramid first before they finished all this, because they were afraid that if they did all this, somebody would say, put another box up here or something. So I am and Mitterrand and Chirac were all committed to getting this thing done, and they really did it. So.
I see you have a new profession nowadays, or a new business.
I'm keeping busy like you are, I'm sure.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay, good seeing you.
I have a couple more questions, George, real quick. Rhoda, and maybe we can combine these a little bit. Rhoda and Tom Lawrence out in Seattle said you showed a number of IM sketches. Can you talk about the role of sketching in his design process? And I noticed that Stephen Oles has come back into the meeting, so he's going to keep you honest about this a little bit probably. And then Jim also asked in general what the design process was, how large were the teams, how did it work in the office? Okay, well, let me start by saying that IM designed his buildings in his mind. And if you read any of the books on IM, you'll essentially get that story. So he really designed in his head. And then he came in and he would draw, you know, a few kind of quick sketches
And then the whole team, and the team size varied, Jim, depending on the project. I mean, if it's something like a small kind of building like Choate Rosemary Hall, we may have had 3 or 4 people. But you know, on the larger projects like the Louvre, I mean, there are a lot of people working on all different components of that. And by the way, the Louvre really required an office in France, and so they were there working with the local architects and the like, and we had many team members over there working on it. But essentially, IM would come in with kind of a design idea. Why don't we try this? Why don't we do this? We'd all go ahead and draw it and bring it back in, and we'd meet with IM regularly, you know, every day, every couple of days, depending on what we're doing. We were building models, and you know, as I mentioned, and I hope that we can hear from Steve, you know, he was really a critical part of the whole design process for IM for all the years that he was working, and his works are just remarkable, and you see them here. I'm glad these 2 are on the screen, but you know, IM really had the final say, Jim, on what we would do, but he was really open to all manner of suggestions by the team. And the question was, you know, it was like, you know, what direction do you think IM would want us to go? And we did, you know, schemes over schemes over schemes, and we were so excited to do them and happy to do them. You know, everybody was working there very late every night. We'd work on Saturdays all day. It was a different moment, and it really led to great results. I mean, IM had, you know, a series of partners with Jim and with Harry Cobb, and you know, who would do their own projects. So, you know, IM was responsible for this. Jim was responsible entirely, you know, for the Holocaust Memorial and other projects, and Harry did a number of towers, and so there were 3, 4, 5 different kind of design principles, all working on their own projects. But the team, and this is different in many offices, the teams that supported those principles would move back and forth. So, you know, you might be working on a National Gallery one week and the Holocaust Memorial, you know, following it. That's the way the office worked. It was like, who are the best people for the assignment?
I think Steve is unmuted. Steve,
Yeah.
do you want to say hi? And
Yeah,
share
can
your
you hear me?
experience? Yes.
Yeah, George, thank you so much for your comments and for your whole presentation. I actually have screenshot the whole thing, so I love some of your images. But in particular response to the question about how IM worked with the graphic contribution that, you know, I and others made, Ted Musho particularly, I think it kind of defined the term symbiosis, because as an illustrator, of course, I was trained as an architect. I always thought of myself as an architect, not an illustrator. But with some clients, I would be handed a roll of drawings and say, hey, we need a picture. We need it by Wednesday. And those were not the best clients, and those were not the best drawings. With IM, it was always totally different. It was, this is sort of what I'm thinking about. What are your thoughts? How could you, how could we do this? This was why I never had another client like IM Pei, because it was always symbiotic. It was always empathic. It was almost weird sometimes. At one point, he actually asked me to finish a scheme. It's a longer story, but it was one of those disappeared JFK library schemes. But we had such a rapport that it really was literally once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
So, you know, I really feel defined in my life and my career and my whole approach to sort of professional pursuit by IM Pei. I think if it weren't for IM Pei, there would be no Steve Bowles.
Well, that's a high honor, and I know for sure without IMP, there wouldn't be a George Miller. I know that. Did I get the stories right about the National Gallery and the development of what became the tetrahedron glass skylight?
Not quite, George. It actually was Woody Rainey.
Ah,
I've been in touch with Woody in the last couple of weeks, and I got the very long version of the story. I'm not going to go through it, but it was not Dee Dee, it was Woody.
oh,
And I.M. was not particularly pleased with the superseding of the concentric circles, then the eccentric circles that he had made. But Carter Brown loved the scheme, and I.M. was sufficiently confident in his own skills and his own artistic sort of credentials that he could release that to a subordinate, to Woody, and that's actually what was done. And as it could be argued, those pyramids, small pyramids, might even presage the larger one, obviously 10 years later.
thank you.
Interesting.
Ian, do we have other questions?
I think I'm just scrolling to the bottom. I think that's it. Susan Chin said, George, what an exceptional tour through I.M. Pei's legacy. Thanks for sharing your stories and making Mr. Pei and these iconic design projects come alive for us. And I don't think I can say it any better than that. So thank you very, very much from the lecture series, from me, from the Essex Library, and to everybody who attended tonight. What a fabulous overview of just an astounding career. And George, you've shared such lovely stories and details, and the images are breathtaking. So thank you very much for that. And we'll release everybody to their weekend. Thank you all.
Thank you for the invitation.
Our pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you,
See
George.
everyone. Be healthy, be safe.
And you.